be hard. Just, you guys go.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to House Parties.
Woo!
Woohoo! And so, kicking us off today with announcements. Do we have any announcements today?
We've started looking at missions trip locations, so that's fun.
Get excited about that. I heard last year's was amazing. If you weren't at last year's and you're curious, a good place to start is ask someone in your group who did go last year.
Yeah.
They could tell you how amazing it was. We're super excited about it.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know.
I think technically by the time you see this video, next week will be student night.
Yeah, probably.
Yes. So
if it's gonna be the first week of the month, then yes, it'll be student night. Yeah.
So if this is in fact airing on the 26th of October, then yes, next week will be student night. So we'll have food for you. We'll have worship.
I have to confirm it right now. We can't just have this hanging. Let's see. Yeah, it's next week. It's happening next week. That's great.
So bring your friends. And yeah, it's just gonna be a great time.
Yep.
As it usually is.
Yep.
I think that's it. I think now it's time for slices.
Oh.
Stetson, did you want to go first?
Yeah, so I learned that there is a specific solar storm that takes place in Canada, and it's kind of like the Aurora Borealis, but better. And they have named it, and its name is Steve.
I am so honored. That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever went by Steve?
No. Well,
S-T-E-P-H, Steve.
Steph.
Steve.
I've gone by Steph, but
Steve.
not Steve.
S-T-E-E.
From Sweden. I'm Steve.
I'm Steve.
From Sweden. You like fish?
What is this?
That's all we eat.
What does the storm look like? Does it look like
The Aurora
Northern Lights?
Borealis,
Okay.
but better.
Okay. All right. Better is
And it's Steve. Oh, look, Steve.
That's good.
Aurora Borealis.
No.
No?
I think maybe I've told you. I wanted, if I ever get a dog, I want to name them like Uncle Jim. Did I tell
Oh,
you this?
yes. I
So-
never thought of an uncle term. Yes.
So, because then you can just be like, oh, who do you live with? Oh, it's just me and then Uncle Jim.
Jim.
And then they come over, it's like, oh, where's your uncle? Oh, man, he just sleeps all the time.
Yep.
Super smelly. Uncle Jim! And it's like a pug, and they go, comes,
Yeah. And then you can yell at him.
yeah.
No, Uncle Jim. Sit.
Especially like on the phone, if nobody has any contact for the dog, it's just like, get out of here! Yeah. So,
That's
anyways.
awesome.
I will go for a slice if that was all you had.
Yep.
Okay, so this happened a bit ago. PayPal, a business, I think Elon Musk, I think, started PayPal.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure.
I think he owns it
That's
at least.
yeah, I think that's how he got his start. So there was this guy named Chris Reynolds who was trying to take out some money from PayPal. Somebody had sent him some money, but PayPal made an error, and for a brief moment made him the richest man alive by putting $92 quadrillion in his bank account.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
You could buy like 3 Cokes with that.
3 Cokes. Yeah. I don't know. I should have done research. I don't know actually how much money exists in the world, but that seems like that's all of it, I would guess.
It's a lot. So you should one day look up like comparatively how much like a million is, and then like a billion. You're like, oh, a million is just like
1,000 billion.
yeah, a billion is just a lot of millions. It's like no, it's a lot. So quadrillion.
There's million, and then 1,000 of those billion, 1,000 of those trillion, 1,000 of those quadrillion.
Isn't it like if you count to 1 million, it'll take you like a week, but if you count to a billion, it'll take you like 33 years
Yes.
or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy.
So-
So it's a lot of money.
Anyways, I don't even know how, like, how they're able to give that much. Like, I don't know what that does electronically to have money, give away money they don't have. It's just like, because it's all like when you transfer money from one account to another, they don't take money out of a vault and move it into another vault.
Yeah. What is money? It's just a number.
That's why I would
website.
say go into cryptocurrency. That's my
No, terrible idea.
Don't do that.
Terrible idea.
right.
Oh. All right, my slice is there is a bakery in California, and this bakery is really big fans of the Star Wars franchise. And they specifically like the scene in Empire Strikes Back where Han Solo is frozen in carbonite.
Wow.
Or at least they were inspired by it because they have made Pan Solo. So for those of you who don't know, pan is Spanish for bread.
Yes.
And so they've made Pan Solo, and it is a bread replica, 1-to-1 of the prop used
That's a
for
lot of
Han
bread.
Solo frozen in carbonite. 6 foot tall.
Gosh. How
It's
do you bake that?
It's a mother and daughter, co-owners of One House Bakery in Benicia, California.
Wow.
Crazy.
I think that's really cool.
That is cool.
What would you just not eat it?
You'd have to get a lot of people over and eat it before it went bad.
That's a lot of butter. It's a lot of bread.
Yeah. That's actually how they got Han Solo out of the carbonite was butter.
Was
Butter.
Yeah.
Oh.
The more you know.
But
It's the extended cut.
yeah.
Layer slab
Yeah,
of butter.
a special edition that y'all haven't seen.
Yeah. Oh man.
Okay, that was like 6. And so we are currently in a series called Green Lights. And the tag for green lights is in the intersections of life. So these are metaphorical intersections. What is your signal to best move forward well? Right? And if you were watching last week, if you weren't, that's okay. But if you were, and I will sum it up for you, we learned that the best way to see these metaphorical green lights, i.e. situations that the best, how do you move forward well, is the situation honoring to you? Is the situation honoring to people around you, to others is the word we use? And is the situation honoring to God? If it is, then that's probably your green light to move forward. Today we're going to talk about situations where, excuse me, where there are 2 decisions, and they both seem like they have a lot of things that are honoring to those 3 categories. They honor your friends and family, they honor yourself and your integrity, and they honor God and your beliefs, but like, you're still not sure which one. And so we decided to call today's discussion Yellow Lights. Do you drive
Shocker.
through?
What?
Do you drive through and speed through? Are you close enough to make it? Or do you slow down and stop? It's not always easy to tell. And I know that you've probably had some hard decisions in your life so far. I know we have. And we're going to try and talk about some of those decisions and how we navigated them. And yeah, do you guys have any situations that come to mind?
When I think about, so I learned how to drive like pretty late. I was 21 when I learned how to drive. And so it's pretty recent. I can remember a lot of what went through my head, just like 3 years ago. There is a lot of fear as it's like, oh no, like I see the light's green right now, but if I get close enough to it, is it going to turn, like, how do I know when I'm supposed to stop? And there have been many times when I should have just driven through, but I gave everybody whiplash because I braked so hard that I'd be like, and then other times where it's like, oh, I can make it, and then I just drive like through a red that's been red for 4 seconds, and it's like, I messed that up. But I think there are a couple. The situations I think of are ones where I know something should be done. So, like, say there was a friend of mine in school who, whenever people would share things that were hard or difficult, this friend had a hard time knowing how to deal with that information. And so he would always make a joke about it, like in the moment. And it really seemed to hurt these people to the point that they didn't want to share things with him anymore. And yet he wanted to be a really good friend, and he just didn't know how to handle that. And so I knew something had to be done, but I didn't know if that was supposed to be me. And so that's kind of this thing of like, is it me that drives through this light and goes for it, or is it me that waits for somebody else to have something happen to it? That's a situation that came up. I don't know if I'll necessarily share it right now. I'll share it later, but what my process is for going through it. But that's one of the situations I think of. Do you have a situation that's like a yellow light situation?
Yeah, this question made me think of college. I'd been dating this girl for like 4.5 years, and it was just really hard to know when we had given that relationship the best shot that we could and when it was time to give up. And it was really, really hard to get to the place where it felt like it's like, okay, I think our relationship needs to end. And it really hurt her. Like, she did not see it coming, and it really, really hurt her. And I knew that it would, and so it was hard to do something that I knew would hurt someone I really cared about.
How did you come to that decision, though? What was, like, the thing that made you go, aha, here's what I should do?
I don't know if it's anything helpful to this conversation, but it's just, we started really compatible, and after dating for 4 years, we had changed and realized, oh, we're not compatible anymore. So, yeah, that's the short version.
That's a hard thing to do, especially after 4 years. That's quite a while.
Yeah.
Landry, do you have any situations?
I do. Funny enough, it was very recent. I had to choose between staying in Texas or moving up here. And both situations had their pros, like things that would be really good. And that's what made it so hard, is because I would either stay in Texas, be around the people I love, be around the people I know, also have I say probably maybe because I don't know for sure, but possibly more job opportunities there as well, being more connected. But then postponing my marriage, because Katie lived here in Greeley, my wife. And then there was moving up here, where I could be with the woman who I knew I was going to be with the rest of my life. And also, the weather was so much better up here, because Texas is unbearably hot most of the year. And both of those situations are what last week we defined what was honoring, which was what withheld the most integrity of that situation, what was most fair and right. And so when we talk about the three things, honoring yourself, honoring others, and honoring God, it's what's most fair and right and correct to those people. And so I was like, I don't know, there's a lot of that in both of these decisions. And I don't know that there was a right answer, but the one I picked is definitely the one that I look back on and don't regret, which was moving up here. And then it's led me to you guys.
Woo!
And now I'm here. I do know that the thing that helped me the most probably were the people that cared about me. Really taking the time to sit down and talk with me. And I'm not talking about like some of my cool friends that I would just hang out with from time to time and they were fun. Like, that's cool too. But I mean, like, the people who really cared about me. My best friend and his mom, who in turn was kind of like my best friend because I spent so much time at my best friend's house that I spent a lot of time with his mom too. My parents. And that really helped me see like whether or not I should move through that yellow light or maybe stop and reevaluate, you know? And so that's my story. I did have a verse that came up. Whenever I have it here, in this time. So yeah, it was Isaiah 30, and I believe it was verse 21. And it was this really cool moment where I realized that the Lord was with me in either decision. And he's talking to the nation of Israel. So way back when, the nation of Israel, over They're still there today over in the east of Africa, and at the time they'd been split up by the Babylonian Empire. And so they were kind of at a loss of what to do in their situation. But the prophet Isaiah was hearing from God that when things were going to start coming back together and getting better, he said, whether you turn to the right or left, this is the verse now. Whether you turn to the right or left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. Meaning that the Lord is going to be in step with you, guiding you. And that really helps me go, okay, I've been stressing over this decision, but at the end of the day, I feel like the Lord's going to be with me no matter which decision I made. And I feel like that's been true. That's my story.
I think something that's important to note about that story is the fact that you were considering where God could use you in either place in Texas or in Greeley. One of the things my dad says is, there are some people who aren't even thinking about that, and they're not even considering. It's like, I'm just going to do what's best for me. I'm just going to do the thing that feels good for me. And maybe they end up picking the better choice on accident. But the fact that you're considering those things, and that if something obvious did pop up, you would turn to it. If there was a really obvious, oh, it's Greeley, or oh, it's Texas, you would turn to it if God made it clear to you. But this idea of that, above all else, if God tells me something, I'm going to do that. But in these moments where I don't know, I'm going to try my best. And then what you said in that verse is God will use my choice and be along with me and come along with me, which I think is pretty, brings me a lot of peace.
So, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did for me as well when I read that.
But I was going to say, when I was being taught to drive by my dad, one of the things he would teach me little tricks to know whether or not I should stop at a yellow light or not. And one of them was, if you think that in order to stop, you're going to have to throw grandma and her freshly baked chocolate cake up against the dashboard, don't stop and keep going. But how that kind of translates into these situations that we find ourselves in, there's a lot of just good advice that's in scripture or things that your friends or family have told you that just the one that I think of, one of my favorite books is the book of James in the Bible. And in James 1:19 talks about being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And so that doesn't necessarily apply to every situation in life, but when there are situations where it's oh, I want to act because I'm angry, and I feel righteous in this fact that somebody did something wrong. It says be slow to become angry. So in those situations, okay, I'm going to sleep on this. I'm not going to just act right away. I'm not going to rush through this intersection. I'm going to slow down. Or if there's a situation where it's I can choose to cut somebody off, or I can choose to really listen to them and hear what they're saying. It's God says do that. If you be quick to listen, slow to speak. So there are situations like that where it's general advice, maybe it doesn't always apply every time, but a good just principle to live on is certain things where it's oh, you know what, it's probably best not to throw grandma against the dashboard.
Yeah.
So
metaphorically.
Yeah, or no, it's probably not good either way.
Literally either.
Yeah.
I do love that picture though, because I feel like a good life hack is to really take that James verse to heart. Because I feel like if you aren't quick to listen and aren't slow to speak, and you just are quick to talk and slow to listen, so I don't know if that's the opposite.
Sure.
I'm trying to do the opposite. If you're the opposite, I feel like you're more easily going to throw your grandma in the back seat with her cake into the seat in front of you, and there's going to be a mess, and you might have to stop in the middle of the intersection, and then back up, and then that's a whole nerve-wracking thing.
Take care of grandma. Yeah.
And so, yeah, make sure grandma's okay.
Yeah.
I can't get out.
I've fallen. And so I feel like that really is a good life hack. If you've been man, I can't figure out how to make a good decision, I think doing what Stephen says, which you got from scripture, is just to kind of take a pause and evaluate that yellow light a little more before you get to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes life's decisions are like yellow lights, where it's like it happens quickly. Mm-hmm. But if you just take a second to process it, I feel like you make better decisions as compared to just and then just being rash, being too quick.
This is kind of pointing out something that, like, the Bible speaks really clearly about a whole bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. But the Bible doesn't address every single situation. Yeah. And there's some situations where we don't know what is right and what is wrong. And some situations that feel like there is no right answer. And that is when it is so important that we have an actual relationship with God where like we can have these conversations with him and ask him these questions, because if we're just treating this like a list of rights and wrongs, when we get into these yellow lights, that's like green lights, they're pretty simple. Like, with the things that you showed us last week, it's like, yeah, like I can remember that, I can figure it out. Red lights are pretty simple too. Like, don't kill your neighbor. It's like,
we'll talk.
That's just not good. And,
don't run over your neighbor.
Yeah.
Or your Amazon Prime delivery.
Right,
box.
but then there's the yellow lights where it's like, do I run this robot over? It's just a robot, but then it could like kick off the whole artificial intelligence revolution. But like, so there's these yellow lights, and that's where it's like, oh my gosh, I am desperate to hear from God because I don't know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like sometimes that's hard to do in an age where you're like, can Google a lot of answers. I think that sometimes there really are decisions that just, like Stetson said, there's just no right answer. It's just kind of, you gotta pick. And you might be experiencing some of those now at where you're at in life. A good example too for some of you guys who plan to go to higher education is college. Like, sure. There might not be a wrong answer. You just gotta pick if you have a few options. Things like that, and as you get a bit older there might be more of those decisions, but not college, but like harder decisions where you're not sure where. And so I think the best way to help navigate and see these yellow lights and better prepare for them, I think what we've kind of come up with is a good place to start would be relationship with God, relationship with trustworthy people, and not being too rash, being a little bit quicker to listen and slower to speak, and what that translates to is to just taking a pause, taking a moment to evaluate before moving.
Yeah. Grandma's in the back seat with the chocolate cake. Yeah. She's fragile.
And so is the cake.
It's true.
Yeah.
Priorities.
But just to add something real quick, I think when it comes to certain situations, sometimes you only have just a little bit of time to decide. Like even in actual yellow lights, it's like you only have a bit of time to decide and make a snap judgment call. And like imagine it's not a yellow light, or imagine that like for some reason you knew that there was going to be a vehicle coming in. It's like you do need to stop, even if you are going to throw the chocolate cake everywhere. It's like stopping is more important. You can ruin the chocolate cake as long as you guys are okay.
You're going to be alive and not hit by an 18-year-old coming the other way.
Right, yeah. I think there are situations where obviously take in good insight if you can, wisdom from other people when you're trying to make a decision. But also just know that like if you try something, like what ended up happening with my friend who I reached out to, I ended up actually reaching out to him and telling him that this was happening. But I prepared beforehand with this idea of maybe this isn't the best option, but I'm going to try my best. And if I mess up, I'm going to learn from it, and then I will know better next time. And that there is grace in that. And I told him, was like, hey, I don't do this very often. I don't know how to confront people. So if I do something that upsets you, please tell me. But then we had that conversation. It was really good. And then I've been able to have conversations like that ever since then and be very comfortable in it, because it's like now I know the timing of that specific yellow light. And it's like I know when I can hit it and I know when I can't. So, yeah, I think there's grace in making mistakes as long as you're willing to learn from it. And it's like, oh, I did run through a red light. but then I didn't do it the next time. So.
And that verse that Landry read, it's like God's always with us, like showing us. It's like, no, it's this way. It's kind of like he's playing that hot and cold game. It's like hotter, hotter, colder, colder. You could just cover your ears and blindly run in one direction.
Yeah.
You get hurt that way a lot of the time, though.
Yeah.
Or if you're an Amazon robot,
It's true.
run over.
All right, I think that's good. Hopefully you guys feel like you might be better equipped to handle these metaphorical yellow lights in your life. Feel free to talk with your leaders in discussion about any questions you have. And I think that's where we're going to call it. See you guys in the next video.
Also, yes, we're matching. He's not.
Your moms would probably appreciate it, and your dad's even too.
You're gonna say your mom joke. I love it when we say things and they're like, I don't like this.
What do you guys think?
Great.
Wonderful.